And I'm gonna be high.
Good on you, Donald. I'm the Rocket Man, yeah.
I'm a rocket man. And I'm gonna be
Rocket Man.
I'm a rocket man.
We got Chris Brewer, CEO of River City Logistics. Been running it since 2018. You're out of Dubuque, Iowa, Midwest Boys podcast today. In fact, it's kind of funny. The last few podcasts, I had somebody from New York, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. was the last three guests. So I'm very thankful to have a Midwest guy on the podcast. No offense to the city folks, but the coasts aren't as cool. So, hey, Chris, thanks for joining. Just give a quick intro. What is River City? What do you do there? What's your role? Obviously, you're the CEO, but what do you do? And then we'll get into it.
Yeah, first of all, Gabe, been following you for a while. Appreciate you inviting me on the show. We'll hold it down for our Midwesterners here. It's starting to get a little warm, so
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to breaking out the shorts here pretty soon and swinging the golf clubs. But I'm the founder and CEO of River City Logistics. Got it up off the ground in 2018. My entire career has been in transportation. I worked on the large fleet side first, moved into a brokerage role, and worked on business development, customer acquisition. Um, Left the space for quite some time, got back in more than a couple years later, and um, started River City Logistics with the idea that I really wanted to control my own culture and direction. We're a three-leveled operation. We've got our dedicated domestic truckload brokerage division. We've also got a fleet of north of 40 power units, and then we just acquired a food grade warehouse in eastern Iowa back in December.
Oh, so that's new. So you've got three distinct divisions: warehousing, asset side, power units, and trailers. You said you have 40 power units around, so
Yeah,
like
give it a
100,
little bit
120
north of
trailers.
40. I mean, we're doing some consolidation, getting out of some of the older equipment. We're converting some of the sleeper trucks to our OTR division, so we added a few day cabs, and that's been fun. My original start in this industry was on the asset side, so like it's always going to be close to home for me. I like building relationships with drivers and watching your customers. You know, they send you pictures of your truck and trailer when they're picking up
Yeah,
facilities. That's like the coolest part for me.
that's awesome. And so you are in Dubuque. You said that you were maybe going to get the shorts out and go golf. I got out on the course yesterday. I don't want to brag. First time out, but it was only like 48 degrees, so it wasn't exactly maybe time to be out. But had to do it. You got a wife and kids. What's your family life like? And then we're going to get into how to build a business because you've built a really successful one. And anybody listening, if you listen to Chris, I bet you could do it at least half as good.
Family is the paramount, man. It's the apex of part of my reason for being. I've got a wife, been together for 15 years. We met in college, been married for 8. I love her dearly, and blessed with 3 kids. I've got a 6, almost 7-year-old daughter, a 4-year-old boy, and an 18-month-old daughter. And our life consists of we're entering the sporting realms.
Yeah,
We,
soccer, t-ball, gymnastics.
yeah. So we invested heavily in a family calendar, which is great for me because I travel 120, 150 days a year. So my wife will just put on the calendar in blue. She doesn't ever put where I'm going. She just put Chris gone. So I appreciate that because then it kind of tells me where my open days are. But family is everything, man. I am working so tirelessly and so hard to build this business and build this brand, so that in the future I'm able to put the right people in place and then buy back some of my time. I want to really enjoy my children growing up. I think that's important to me.
Yeah, I think we share a lot of the same values on that. I last summer I have a 6, 4, and 2-year-old, so we're almost living the same life. But I'm not doing asset based or truckload brokerage, so at least we have something different there. But we just got the kids in sports last year, and I didn't realize how demanding that would be because I didn't realize I was going to end up coaching his t-ball team. So I just put him in t-ball, and then the coach bailed. So they just sent an email, hey, this t-ball team, no coach, so no season. And you can't have your 6-year-old say, or he was 5. He was like, so no season? I was like, no. I'll coach 15 5-year-olds every Monday and Tuesday. It was great. They
Yeah.
had it at 6:30 at night. So I would go to work all day and then go coach 15, 10 or 5-year-olds. But, get into a little bit for me, Chris. Why did you start River City? I mean, you were an employee, you were in the industry, you knew trucking, but did you start it just to build it as a solopreneur, and then you realized you were good at it and you're like, hey, I'll build a team? Or was that kind of always the intention, was to build something big?
Building something big was never really the intention. It was funny. My partner that I brought on after about a year, we talked about, okay, what does scaling this look like? And at first it was like, hey, let's get to 10 to 15 million in annual revenue. We can make a good living. We can be very selective on the customers we want to work with. We can still be involved in a lot of things, and then like a lot of really good stories of people that experience hyper growth during COVID, albeit, it was a pretty nasty time for everybody, I think, economically and physically and mentally. It just opened the door, and it really kind of separated the pretenders from the people who are true freight people in this space.
Yeah.
I would imagine that you experienced some of those similar things, right? I mean, it was very clear as day. Everybody, to a certain degree, if you've got a pulse on a laptop, you can claim to be a freight broker, at least on the truckload side, right?
Yeah.
But it takes somebody far more intelligent and experienced, and somebody who calls this their craft and their profession rather than their job. I have a firm belief that we are employing people, coaching, developing logistics professionals, not just people here looking for a job or employment. But it really just kind of spun out of control, man. I'm being completely honest. A lot of people don't know this, but we were actually an agent. So we were in the agency model when we
Yeah.
first kicked off. And what that allowed us to do was just focus and concentrate all of our time and energy on customer acquisition and carrier operations, right? Um, Breaking off was rather difficult. To break off a book of business that large was incredibly hard. That's a completely different show. But I'm grateful for that path because it afforded me the opportunity to streamline just two processes: customer acquisition and carrier operations. And if you can do those two things really well, I think it makes building the back end really more manageable. I wouldn't call it easy, but it's more manageable. If you know you have revenue and you know that you have customers that believe in you, and on top of that, you have carrier operations people who are actually building relationships, not just throwing loads on the board. That's not what we do here. We're very old school. I think that allows you to scale sometimes in a much quicker fashion than you even thought was possible.
Yeah. Not even just like one big customer at a time. It sounds like it was a whole orchestra of growth there. Especially, I like the way you said that, where anybody with a laptop and a pulse could have been a freight broker in 2021, 2022. I think a lot of them have weeded themselves out now, but they're still around. But the market didn't recover like everybody thought it would. And it's, what are we, April of 2025? I think it's supposed to have recovered at least twice by now. So where is it? But, walk me through this. I've got a question tactically. You built out the team, and actually, talking agency model and then splitting off, getting your own MC. Walk me through the process. Somebody today as an agent wants to split off, or they just want to start up a brokerage. Do a little tutorial. What do you got to do that? An MC number, some insurance, pay some carriers. What goes into that?
Oh man, I thought I had this figured out. I'm not gonna lie. I put probably a good 2 years worth of network building. LinkedIn's been great to me. The community has been incredibly positive. I was able to forge a lot of good relationships with financial institutions and lenders and factoring companies. Um, it is a lot harder than you realize to peel off a decent sized book. I would say the sweet spot is like 3 to 10 million. If you can do it in that range, it
Mm-hmm.
makes it far more manageable, right? When you're averaging, 5 to 8, $10 million a month in annual or in monthly revenue, and you have a brand new MC, the world of credit is a monster. It's you know what I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
we had to call in some favors. We met some people in some pretty high places just from being at all these events, and being able to share our story with them, and we, signed some paperwork and shared some customer lists. And after that, we got some buy-in from who we were doing business with. But
Yeah.
my advice always when I get asked this question is, you're in one of two places. You're either incredibly content with where you are as an agency owner.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine. You can make a great living. There are some protection there for you from the parent company. Where I kind of fought the fork in the road was, I felt like my brand was incredibly valuable. I thought that people were speaking highly of it, and our clients could support those statements. And for that, I wanted to be completely independent, and that was our decision making when and my partners and I decided to split off.
Yeah. I mean, the people don't realize how many agents are like they're different names, but they're agents. And, like in the truckload world and in the LTL side. And I like both models, honestly, but more particularly moving off of the agent discussion, are you VC funded?
I am 100% bootstrapped.
That's music to my ears. It's
Yep,
been, I don't know if I have had a guest for 20 some episodes in that has been a bootstrapped freight brokerage.
I am
Everybody I've
100%.
interviewed is VC backed. And I always play nice. And I'm like, yeah, that must be cool. And how does that work? But I've always been like, well, so profit is just not ever like profitability isn't a metric that you look for. And I'm like, it just doesn't make sense to me. So you bootstrapped it, and I think that it's worth noting, at least, or defining, bootstrapping doesn't mean that you don't take loans and that you don't have debt and that you don't have to risk a ton of money. It's not, I think people think bootstrapping is like, oh, you start with $0 and then you make 10 and you pay your employees 8 and you have $2 and then you keep building. But if the market flips, then suddenly you owe more than you have. And like you don't have investors to just say, here's a bridge. So bootstrapping in a high revenue truckload brokerage is you don't sleep as good. But some of the benefit is you control it and you don't have anybody saying, hey, chase a different revenue model. Don't go after these customers. You have to take this customer because it's a strategic investor of ours, owns part of that company. And then that company's going to not, they're going to short pay you 100,000, but you kind of need to stay. Like I've seen all of that happen. But walk me through why you bootstrapped, what exactly you define as bootstrapping, and then we'll get into that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So my philosophy for bootstrapping was, I wanted complete control of the organization. I wanted to be able to control the culture. I wanted to be able to control the talent, the training, the development. That is incredibly important to me, and I'm grateful to have a couple of partners that are on the same page. Right?
Yeah.
I brought in some really, really smart, talented people, and I gifted them equity in this business when they believed in me more than anybody else. And we're all aligned, and I think that's hard to find, is four people that are on the same page. But this is a story that I'll share. So my original partner and myself, we worked full-time jobs for the first 14 to 15 months. I drove Lyft and Uber like 8 or 9 hours a day, early in the morning, late at night. And he had a full time job working as like a logistics guy for a large retailer. And then we worked freight throughout the day. And we vowed to take no money out of the business for almost 13 months,
That's awesome.
which afforded us the ability to not have to go out and chase any outside money. Um, there's a million ways to do it. I just, for me, it would have, I don't know if disingenuine is the right way, but again, just going back to the fact that I wanted to be able to control the future of the organization, and really have a lot of say in where we go.
Yeah, and I think people probably would guess or characterize me as anti VC, but I'm actually just anti VC in freight brokerage,
Yeah.
right? And I think that software sales, like the Silicon Valley, that makes sense because you're building a product and you're trying to get 15,000 customers to use it, and then you could sell or IPO. Profitability is a different thing when you're investing in tech, but freight brokerage, I've never seen it work. And anybody who says, yeah, VC money in freight brokerage, see, look at this beautiful exit. And I'm like, no, it was a forced exit. They couldn't get the Series C, so they exited. That's different. Or they peeled off the tech and sold the brokerage. And we've seen that with a couple of companies over the last year. I just don't think it makes any sense because you're supposed to be servicing customers one at a time and creating a brand and creating a reputation. And you in VC, you have to grow way too fast in order to get to the next round. So I'm not necessarily anti-venture capital. I just think it doesn't belong in freight brokerage. And the reason I think that is because you run your business similar to how I do. Like, I want to not control people. I want to control the brand, and I want to be able to make sure that if one of our KPIs is 15-minute response time, well, then we can't have 100 new customers a month, because you just can't hire enough people to keep up with that. And then you do, and you hire people that are C players just to fill seats, and then suddenly your culture is degrading, and then you lose control real quickly. So, what are your thoughts on that? And then I got a couple more questions.
Well, from a cultural perspective, I think we see completely eye to eye. You were spot on. I mean, it's never about controlling people. It's controlling the funnel, whether that be process improvement, training and development. I
Yep.
have this philosophy. My goal as a founder and a leader, I currently oversee our outside sales team, right? And so my goal every single day is to give them the best opportunity to use the skill set that they have to build relationships and close deals. And if I can give people the tools and the platform and the confidence, I think people forget about that, and the confidence to change their life monetarily while at the same time delivering for our clients and then representing the brand in the right way. I think that's how you build a good business. Now, this is my first go around. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've failed at a lot of things,
No way.
but persistence trumps all, right? And so, if I were to ever have to do it again, I know that coaching and culture has to be at the foundation for success.
So take me through that. So culture, one of the things I struggled with early on and still do now is I thought that the metric of hiring more people meant that we would be more successful. And I opened the funnel of like, I'll hire mostly, and this isn't a characterization of anybody who worked here, but anybody who wanted to work here who I thought was successful already. I was like, yep, come and bring that success here. It's not how it ended up working out for a lot of the folks. And that's as a reflection of me just as much as them. So, but as you're building it, you've got what, 40 employees on the brokerage side, maybe another 30 or 40 on the other divisions. How do you, what's your process for hiring? Are you posting jobs and then, interviewing 10 for every one hire, or are you working mostly on referrals, word of mouth? Your employees have friends, they say, hey, I'll vouch for them. What's your main strategy there?
Yeah, I think you and I are both in similar positions, right? We're in small markets, and
Mm-hmm.
one of my partners who moved here from Chicago, really smart guy. That was one of the first identifying factors he had mentioned. He goes, "We're going to run out of talent if you think we're going to hit these in the next 3, 5, 7, and 10. Like, we're going to run out of talent. What are we going to do?" So our strategy, it took us about 6 months to put together. We went to, so there's 4 local colleges and universities in small town Dubuque. I went to one, my other partner went to the other. The third is the larger of the 3, and then there's a junior college, more of a trade school. And we went and made friends with all of their academic affairs folks. And we are incredibly proud of the internship program that we have here at River City. Um, these kids come in this year. We'll have 7 to 10 summer interns, and the goal is post grad to hire 70 to 75%. We bring them in all summer. We pay them. We give them no different training than we would a new hire who's been in the industry, which takes about 45 to 60 days. We take them and show them the inside of a truck and show them what hooking up to a trailer looks like. And we'll take them to the warehouse this summer and teach them what transportation is in a nutshell. The goal for us is to show people that transportation can be cool and fun. It's one of the oldest kind of stuck in
Yeah.
time industries out there. But that culture will take care of those question marks, right? Um, Ultimately, our goal is to pick out the best of the group, allow them to create their own schedule part time, and so they do like track and trace ops, after hours off, weekend coverage.
Oh,
Pay them
cool.
while they're in college with the intention that when they graduate in May, they have an offer and full time employment. And then we don't have to train; they just come in and they produce revenue on day one when they get their degree.
That's pretty hilarious that we have like Fargo has a tri-state, 3 main colleges and a junior college, and we did the same thing. We had an internship program for sales and marketing, and
Yep.
most of our marketing hires and a couple of our sales hires they were interns, and they just end up staying. And then Rocket, I started it in 2020. So like I didn't really have an option to hire local and fill an office. So a lot of our employees ended up being remote. Then when we started hiring local, it was an internship program, same play. But it was different than what I think a lot of the industry thinks of, like the huge brokers that are like, they got a booth at every talent fair and all that. It was more strategic, like get one hire and then say, hey, you must have friends who are in college. Because in college, everybody's each other's friends. I only have like 2 friends right now, 3. I don't want to offend the third one. But, when I was in college, everybody was my friend. And so that's how we've done it. It's just say, hey, you have friends, right? They can probably do the same things as you. Sweet. And paid internships are beautiful. It is an investment, though. I think people don't realize that. Like, you have to train people and you don't know if they're going to stay. There's risk in all business transactions. So what do you think of, let's pivot here. What do you think of the market right now?
Boy, I wish I had a crystal ball.
Yeah.
We mentioned earlier that we thought the market was going to change twice. I was definitely on the wrong end of that. I thought my initial reaction was we couldn't have gone another peak season without dwindling profitability. I don't know that we can go through that again this year, but our business is more contractual than spot, and so we've remained at a fairly comfortable place. We're by no means are we growing like weeds, but we're not downsizing. We just acquired another business in December, and I don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of things. The big T word right now. That's the scary one. Tariffs. I mean, everybody's. I wish I
Yeah.
could ban that word from my LinkedIn feed. Just
I
like,
blocked it on my X feed. You can block words on
yeah,
X.
I
I was
did
like,
do
no
that.
more, no more.
I wish I knew. All I know is this, and I after talking to you and reading your content for a couple of years, if you show up to work every single day and you put both boots on, and you show up with purpose and intent, I think you can succeed in any market. That's just my philosophy. I'm the type of person that will just grind it out. I think that's kind of one of our core values here is, show up to work every day with intent and purpose, and good things will happen. Things will take care of themselves. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that you and your partners have to deal with when there's tariffs and there's interest rates are so high and the factoring rates are pretty high and all of the different factors, pun intended. But if you just show up every day and get new customers as often as you can, and my philosophy is if you just never lose any customers. So like at Rocket, one of our core values, I guess, is keep customers forever. And if we don't lose customers, we don't have to add any. Our customers will grow. Granted, I'm a sales guy, founder-led sales, so I'm always adding customers, but I don't have to because we don't lose customers. That's our goal. Now, we don't do pure brokerage. We do managed trans and final mile, and we have a TMS, and so they can use their carriers and they can use ours. And so we might lose market share within a customer, but we don't ever lose the brand. And so that's our play. But how do you look at growth right now? I mean, the top transport topics, top 100, I glanced at it. I think our marketing team put out a whole like thing on it, but there wasn't a lot of growth. There's some new names in the top 100, but even the big ones that acquire, like Schneider acquired Cowan, and there you would have thought there would have been more year over year growth because they
Yeah.
didn't acquire them like at the end of the year. I guess it was close for their fiscal, but there was a lot of 2% growth or negative 4% growth. Worldwide Express didn't grow. That was surprising because they had the Unishippers Global Trans
Mhm.
Worldwide. I thought they'd be at 5.5 billion, and they're at 4.5 or whatever it was. Don't quote me on that worldwide, but I mean, that's a really good metric to say, hey, everybody's feeling it. And then you look at it, it's like, yeah, nobody really grew. And in freight, if you're not growing 20%, 15%, you're kind of stagnant. So it's an interesting thing. I think that it will weed out more and more of well, actually, I'm wrong. I'm always wrong on this. I thought it would weed out the smaller brokers and then like the mid-sized players, but it turns out like the biggest ones that got weeded out were like Surge and Convoy and the big ones.
The big ones. Yeah.
So that was surprising to me. I've called it wrong every time too. At least we can admit it.
Yeah.
Uh, there's some people on LinkedIn still like, no, I've been right about this market. I'm like, no.
What
My
do you mean
favorite is
like
when I see,
consolidation? I mean,
yeah,
what do you think? I think we could be entering a interesting next 90 to 120 days. Um, I've
well,
been hearing some things, reading some things, nothing official, obviously, but what do you think about consolidation in the mid to large size realm? Do you think that that's something that has legs?
well, I think it has a lot to do with if the Fed cuts rates. on debt.
Yep.
If they can borrow money a little cheaper, the big dogs are going to go buy. Like they're
100%.
just sitting there with cash saying, we're going to loan, but we don't want to pay a 5.5 Fed funds rate. Could we get that down a little lower before we go purchase? It's the same thing if you're looking at buying a house. You're just kind of like, I'm going to buy a house and I'm going to buy that house, but I might wait. And as soon as the money is flowing again, as far as borrowing, I think it'll be massive consolidation. I mean, like, what was it in 2022? Knight Swift started buying stuff, right? They bought AAA Cooper. They now bought Dependable Highway Express. They're going to buy another in the LTL side. They're going to buy another LTL carrier because they have Midwest Motor too. So they're missing I guess they're missing a couple of markets, but I would say they're going to buy somewhere in Texas. Maybe not. They might buy in the Northeast. They don't have anybody up there,
I
but
was
they're going to
gonna say
buy.
the
And
North.
they're in the truckload market, but they're buying in the LTL, which is kind of fun to see. I don't know. Who do you think? Bold prediction. You don't have to name names, but maybe you can hint. Who do you think will buy who?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I could see a large national carrier buying a large 3PL,
That would
or
make sense.
or vice
Diversify
versa.
their revenue. Yeah.
I
A
do.
little combination of like synergy and inorganic growth and cross pollinate. And I
Yeah,
mean, UPS bought Coyote. It could be something like that.
that's my prediction. I just having both a fleet and a truckload brokerage division, um, the conversations are just a little more fluid. We can speak to both.
Yeah.
We train people on both sides. They know how one side works versus the other.
That's huge too.
You know,
Brokerage sales reps who know how an asset company works.
yes,
It's a big advantage.
it is a huge advantage, and we try to share as much information as possible about what's going on the fleet side, what we're seeing in the market. I just think from a business development guy, from a sales guy myself, me seeing it on a small scale, you're talking about these massive operations. I think you could see that. You're starting to see some of the largest supply chain and shakers and movers in the country do cool stuff. I mean, Walmart launched their brokerage. I mean, that
And
was a
they
big
like,
deal, man. I got an
didn't they
email.
have like an invite to a load board to go out and
Yeah,
everything? You can,
I
oof.
got this email, man, from Walmart Transportation, and at first I thought it was spam. I'm like, "There's no way," But we met the qualifications. We had enough power units. We were in a market they needed help in, and it was real. It was true. Um, you know, I could see that happening. So amongst some of these really large shippers, I mean, it makes a ton of sense. I oftentimes think in the back of my head, I'm like, would some of our customers just, you know, say, "Hey, we'll buy you," and then you just be our in-house brokerage? I mean, that would be crazy, but that's my prediction. I hope I'm wrong, but that's my prediction.
I think I could make two big predictions. One, I think Ryder will buy a truckload digital broker because they only grow through acquisition anyways. That's their entire strategy. And they have all these assets that they use for final mile and middle mile, but they could use for other purposes. And I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think one of the like first few guys at Convoy ended up at Ryder now as like a technical guy there. And I'm like, well, that's an interesting move. Why do you hire that guy? Probably because you're going to buy a truckload brokerage and make it a new digital broker. Because
Uh,
Uber Freight is kind of like, oh, we either buy or die at the moment. They're going to try to buy somebody. And then another bold prediction in the LTL is that Amazon will buy Estes or Arnell or Saya or as big of carrier as they can buy. Because they just announced they're doing Amazon LTL.
oh
And
wow,
that's like as big as Walmart saying they're doing truckload. Amazon LTL, everybody who ships into Amazon, that whole e-commerce supply chain and all of that, you had to route your own LTL. Now they're saying, no, just route it with us. So of course they're going to need more assets. They got to buy an LTL player.
that's brilliant. By the way, good for them.
Yeah, it's going to shake things up for
It
sure.
is. Yeah.
The big LTL brokers, if I was an exec there, I'd be like, oh, I don't love that move. If I'm worldwide, I do not love that move.
No, certainly not. I would be hard pressed if R&L sold. That's a really well run business.
Yeah, the only reason I said RNL and Estes is because they're the only two privately held ones
Yeah.
that matter. And sometimes buying a Saya or well, there's only like a handful of the public ones that they could buy. It's much more complex to buy a public company than to just buy Estes.
Yeah.
There's no way Jeff Bezos doesn't. He wants to buy Estes, and I know he's not running Amazon, but you get my point. He
I get
wanted
it.
to buy Estes back in the day. Maybe they try to buy XPO or QXO or RXO, or I don't know which letters they are, but it's XPO is the LTL side.
Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised now that they've already split the stock. Somebody could buy XPO.
Technically, it is split. I mean, it's a possibility, but I did not know that about Amazon. They're doing so many. They've got their hands in everything, man.
Here's a good Amazon story. I'm going to get it wrong, but Amazon and XPO was their largest LTL partner. And you can imagine you have Amazon as an account, you're set. Like ABF has Amazon as an account, they're set. So XPO was their biggest player. And XPO hired one of the executives away from Amazon as their CFO at the time. And this is just a story I've heard secondhand, so I'm not in the room. And the next day, Jeff Bezos called XPO and said, we're severing our contract. We're done. And they XPO was no longer allowed to deliver to Amazon's. If it was an FBA, they weren't their number one carrier. There's like this whole thing. And I might have gotten some of those details wrong, but you guys can call me out in the comments. But that was like, they severed the relationship just off of that. And then like on that same vein, FedEx Ground and Amazon, they got into a huge dispute. And then FedEx tried to play hardball, I guess, with Jeff Bezos and said, well, we're going to give you a huge increase on on Amazon Prime air shipments. And Bezos just severed the contract and bought like 20 jets the next day. And so that's why I think Amazon will buy an LTL carrier, because when they say they're going to go into a market, they want to be the monopoly. They don't want to just play an LTL. They want to own it.
Yeah. Do you think, I'm just curious, do you think Jeff started the company with the intention to be one of the largest, if not the largest supply chain leaders in the world?
Yeah, I do think that in early 2000s, like there was some interview he did with Lex Friedman, I think, on a podcast, and he was talking about in the 2000s he knew he was going to be a supply chain company at that point.
Wow.
And then like he had this like team of 5 executives that like were his assistants, but they're like executive level, and they would run each department. And they came up with Amazon Prime, and like that was not a popular idea. It was like, well, it's going to be a huge loss leader, and then they agreed on it, and then it was like, all right, we can destroy FedEx and UPS. Like nobody thought that was coming, and then they did it really well. Now they just copied the whole FedEx model. Like they have independent contractors in Amazon Prime vans all over the world.
Yep. Yeah.
So I would imagine if I'm an LTL exec, I'm selling to Amazon or I'm competing against Amazon. It's going to be tough.
Yeah. I try to be on the right side of history, man, but I just don't see him slowing down.
No.
Not unless the feds get in the way.
No, and in this administration, they will not get in the way of M&A.
No.
Lena Khan is going to be gone at the SEC. She's not going to be stopping M&A anymore. So it's going to be interesting. I am glad to be in like the TMS home delivery managed trans where it's like, hey, if Amazon's amazing, I'll just put them in my platform too. I don't have to compete against them. I'll just call my customers and say, hey, we got Amazon LTL delivering to homes. Did you know that? I'll be the first to API integrate.
Yep.
But let me pivot back a little bit. So instead of talking macro, walk me through some of your like philosophies on when do you fire an employee? What does it take at River City to get fired? We don't have to talk specifically, but in general.
I think in our 6.5 year history, we've only ever separated ways with maybe 2 or 3 people for performance. We are incredibly invested in making sure that these people come in and they have everything that they need to be successful. Generally in most cases, they kind of do it to themselves. I get to spend a lot of time with these people. I still work one on one with a lot of these people. I trust them; they trust me. So you build a bond with them. You want to do everything you possibly can to keep them employed. We went through a downsize when we broke away from our agency. Well, one of our customers wasn't able to come with, and so that was a difficult time. That
Yeah.
was self inflicted. That was tough, but we were able to bring the majority of those people back. But at the end of the day, I think we get back to society where you hold the keys to your own success, and you have to answer for your own failures. That's ultimately what I'm looking for is a little bit of accountability.
Yeah. I mean, it was trending the wrong direction for the last 5, 6 years, but I think that there's a tipping point. Um, and I've seen that on our side as well. Like the age groups that I hire in have been, we've learned some lessons. And I thought that hiring Gen Z would be difficult. And actually, I've had a lot of success with that. They show up to work on time. They stay late.
Yep.
They have some good accountability. There was some, in fact, actually, the 40 to 50-year-old range that I hired, that's where I've struggled the most. And I actually attributed that to the fact that I'm 31. And they were like, are you sure that you're going to tell me what to do? Which I don't really tell people what to do anyways. I just do it alongside them. Uh, I'm just an individual contributor. I just happen to love sales and customer success. So that's where I hang out. I actually do a lot of marketing too, but we're on a podcast, as you can imagine. So that's an interesting. So you've only had to fire a couple for performance, and then the rest kind of do it to themselves, and it's a mutual thing. They understand it too.
Yeah.
What what's your biggest missed opportunity running River City? What's the one thing where you missed a customer because of something, or your biggest missed opportunity?
I would say my biggest missed opportunity was in 2020 to 2021, being so enthralled in still managing my own book at that time. I really missed the boat to get out and sell our asset division launch. Because when I'm in the field now in a really bad market, and I roll up into Southwest Wisconsin and I'm knocking on a door, decent sized shipper, and first thing out of their mouth is, "Hey, well, do you have your own trucks?" And it's like, "Yeah, we've got like 45 or 50." The guard just comes all the way down, like immediately, right? Like it,
Yep.
the scowl turns into a smile, turns into a, "Hey, come in the office, let's talk." Um, Customer acquisition was for us, and I would imagine for you guys in successful operations, was relatively easy if you had true capacity during the early onset of COVID. Uh,
Yeah.
we started the fleet in August of 2020, right in the thick of it, right? Um, I felt like I missed a 2 year window where I could have capitalized on having that newly formed fleet. But
Yeah.
conversely, I keep telling myself, Gabe, it probably would have led to hyper growth, which would have ultimately affected the rate at which we hire, the type of person that we bring into the
Yeah.
operation, and then negatively affect the culture. So, missed opportunity, yeah. Blessing in disguise on the back end, that could be true too.
It could be. I like the silver lining and the hindsight on that. I think, you know, on an opportunity like that, I remember 2021 and 22. If you wanted to get onboarded, you had to have assets. And it's kind of funny. Like Freight Caviar always puts out like hey, we have a truck. We're asset based, and it's like a dry van, but it's just a trailer and it's down by a river. And there is an MC on it, or there's a trailer number. It's like, yeah, we're asset based. You know, we did the whole women owned, and my wife owned more of the majority of the truckload brokerage, and we were trying to do that angle. There's always an angle to try to play, and my wife works at Rocket, so it wasn't disingenuous. She partners with me. We built it together, so we tried to get in based on that 2022 diversity supplier. We got into every major shipper in the US that we wanted to, and they onboarded us in like 10 days. Turns out they wanted to use us for assets. So like they're like, here's your RFP. And we're like, well, we can't really win any of those prices. They're like, you got some assets? I'm like, no, we're a broker.
Yeah, I thought we discussed this, and
Oh man. So we
onboard.
were moving freight for Aldi and all these brands. And I was like, this is not going to work out, guys. So my biggest missed opportunity was not executing on that, but also a blessing in disguise. I'm glad that I'm running the home delivery, because at the time we were growing in both. Like we had the LTL established, and I was like, we should do white glove home delivery. And then we were also doing the truckload brokerage. And now white glove home delivery is like our North Star. That's what we're growing. We still have a lot of LTL, but our fastest growing business unit is home delivery.
I love that for you. I don't know a lot of people in that space, so good for you, man.
Neither do I, which is just, it's kind of fun. Like my whole goal is to create a monopoly in a small market.
Yeah,
LTL is much smaller than truckload. Home delivery is even smaller than LTL, but there's only tech companies play there. Nobody really brokers and has managed trans there.
Yeah,
So
not the
we just
operation.
integrate with the tech, and we're the face. So it's been fun. In LTL, you can get referrals from customers, and that's always great to grow that way. But in Final Mile, we've had people come to us because they heard that we can do it. They're
That's
like, yeah, we heard
awesome.
you can do the home delivery. I'm like, yeah, we can. And they're like, here's all of our business. Oh, thank you. We'll do that.
Just business
So
falling in your lap in the worst freight market we've ever experienced.
yeah, I know it's
It's a
crazy. And
terrible
also,
problem to have for you, Gabe.
yeah, and my favorite thing about the Final Mile is that you don't have to add new customer service employees and new operations rep every account, because it's all API and it's tracking, and it's
Yeah.
like it's a different type of business. So it is kind of fun. Now, speaking of team size, how do you look to the next 2 years? Do you guys hire when you need it? Do you try to hire ahead of growth? You have an internship program, or are you full in on AI is going to replace everybody at your company? It's going to be you and your 4 partners and an AI bot.
I'm all the way out on the AI one. I'm
I've seen
totally
your posts, so I knew that.
Yeah, I'm all the way out. I'm totally good with technology, working on mundane back end tasks,
Yeah,
non-revenue generating tasks where the human touch, human element is required. Um, our growth strategy is fairly simple. We basically hire to scale based on what our pipeline looks like. I'm not too proud to admit this. For the first time ever, we hired like a real sales team. Up until last year in November, December, it was really just me and my partner
yeah,
responsible for all of the revenue. And so now I get to lead those young women and men. But we this is going to be a tricky year, I feel like, for us, as we start to look at what the 30, 60, 90-day pipeline looks like. Obviously, the size of the opportunity, we're pretty specific on who our ICP is and what they look like. We know who we're looking to go after, what commodities, what markets, what modes. Um, Having the internship program helps. So we're generally, we're speculating, anywhere from 3 to 5 new hires post graduation, and then we'll trickle in 1 to 2 sometimes in December. This could be our largest year for hiring outside of the 20 plus people we hired during COVID. But
yeah,
having the internship program makes that far more manageable.
yeah. And like, I think that, well, I know that most companies in freight don't have an internship program unless they're the really big players, right? And then they hire like crazy. And then everybody in the middle uses recruiting, which I'm not against using a recruiter for certain roles or positions. And I think there's value there. But it does come at like the average salary might be 40% more per employee when you're going and recruiting somebody from another brokerage. And and the reason people do it, and I did it early too, they didn't know how to train a new employee. So if they don't have experience, what are you going to do? Teach them about freight? But it sounds like at River City, you guys got a program for that, or at least a methodology. Is that one of your partners that handles that side? Do you handle that?
Yeah. So my partner Nick Lester put together the entire training book. We just solidified. I think our internships. I think they're going to be notified on Friday. Who are 7 to 10 are coming in this summer, and he'll pretty much run with them, train them along the way. He takes on all new hires. Doesn't matter if you've been in freight for 20 years or if you've never seen the inside of a truck. We mandate that everybody go through our process. We want people to learn the River City way,
Yeah.
and it might not be the best way for everybody, but it's the best way for us. And we want to be uniform in the way we look at servicing clients and taking care of carriers. And at the end of the day, our end all be all goal is to be a broker of choice for both shippers and carriers. That's ultimately what I'm trying to build.
Yeah, and I think that one of your mantras could be, and especially since you're bootstrapping and you've reached a scale that you have now, I think you understand this as well as I. 3 years ago, your customers were like, "How big are you? Are you stable enough? Can we look at your financials in order to onboard?" And I was like, "Well, so I think we're going to be pretty big, but hear me out. We just started.
Yeah,
There's
we just
nothing you
got
can
going.
do." Parent company's pretty big. What do you think of that?
Yeah,
And now that's kind of moved into you. Everything you've talked about on the episode, literally every theme of it has been you're building this for the long term. You're not building it for today. You don't do an internship program and train people for 60 days if you're trying to sell the company next year. And I'm not saying that no one can sell just because they're building it that way. But the VC model, not to bring it back up, is you have to build and sell so quickly. And there's other models, and I know you guys aren't running this, but it's like VC model, ABL operating line model, where like you have to get a new customer in order to keep the line active, and you can borrow 110% of revenue, but you better be growing at 40 or 50 or 100%,
Yep.
or else now they're going to call. And that we saw a couple of brands go down because of that during COVID, not because of VC money. They went down because of ABL lines, and the bank said, I would like to call on that loan now.
We're
You
going to
broke the
pull a note
covenant.
back and you're SOL.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter if you have Anheuser-Busch if you can't do that. Like, that's the only reason to have Anheuser-Busch anyways, is because you need revenue, not profit. But you're looking at this, and from what I hear, you're building it profitably and sustainably, and you're training hires, and you're trying to build this as like a real brand for a long time. And I just think that that's going to be the popular thing. Everybody's going to want to do that in a couple of years, and you're going to be so far ahead. Instead of customers saying, hey, how big are you and how stable? They're going to say, are you VC financed? Are you stable in that? And they're going to say, oh, you're profitable for the last 8 years, onboarded. It's going to flip. And I think River City is going to have a big windfall from that.
I appreciate it. I can see it going that way. You're right, though. I mean, we definitely we've had several people ask us for financials, and it's usually the bigger players, right? That they get
Yeah.
burned. You know, they're paying the broker who went out of business. Then all the carriers are coming back collecting payments. And trust me, I get it. We're comfortable. We're confident. You know, we play in the green. The goal is to make money. I mean, it is to make money, right?
Yeah.
There's a right and a wrong way to do it. We're going to do it our way. But you're right. You know, to build something of substance means to take a little bit longer, and it's going to be a little bit more painful. But you know, if one of my children decides to take this thing over one day, and I
Yeah.
would absolutely love that, and I can sit back and be dad, and I can travel the country with them on sales calls or whatever the cool stuff they want to do, I can die happy, man. It's for me, it's a legacy play, man.
Yeah, same here. And I've already started to be like, all right, which kid is taking this over? Shoot, I don't know how to pick. Maybe I'll have to sell it and then help them start their own so that it's just theirs. But I've seen that play out poorly. And like, one of the things I always say to my wife and my family is like, they're like, oh, you're going to hand it down to your kids, or you're going to work with your family. Michael, our CSO, is my brother-in-law, my wife's brother. And Troy, our CTO, is my best buddy, and we CrossFitted together. And so we have a lot of family members in the business. And I'm like, yeah, it's risky to do that.
Yeah.
But that's the type of risk I like to take in life, because the upside is really high. Great relationships, and you build something together. The downside is also there. Maybe you have to fire a family member. I've not had to do that, but that would suck. Or maybe the business goes bankrupt and everybody fails. That could happen. It's not going to, but there's always risk.
There's
But I
risk in
think that
everything.
that's what else is there? The spice of life. I think bootstrapping is the spice of life. Especially, and I'm going to even caveat, I'm not saying that you have to do it this way, but if you've got a family and you've got kids and you're bootstrapping and you're building it all together, that's like, what else could you ask for?
It's awesome.
It's just the best. So, hey, I appreciate you coming on. I have one more question I ask everybody on the show. I already hinted at a missed opportunity, but what's one mistake that you made along the way, whether it was agency to MC or starting the asset side? What's a mistake that you made that if you didn't make it, you'd actually be better off now, or it would have just not had a lesson that you had to learn? So it can't be fundamental to how you got here. It's
Yep.
just a mistake that if someone else is building a business, they're like, I'll just avoid that one. Just I learned from Chris. What do you got?
That is a phenomenal question. This is my best advice, and it happened to me, and I'll never make this mistake again. Like you, Gabe, I employ my three closest cousins. At one point, both my brothers, I had to get rid of one. At one point, my father sold his business, decided he wasn't done working, came here. I would say the biggest mistake I made was keeping incredibly high performers who are terrible people.
There
That's
it is.
that's my biggest mistake that I've made, and I won't make it again.
So you're saying Chris Brewer, River City Logistics, is saying it doesn't matter how high they perform, if they're wrecking culture, if they're the wrecking ball, if they're the instigator, you got to get rid of them.
You got to
And
go.
it'll be better for your company, short term and long term, even though it seems like the exact wrong thing to do.
Yeah, nobody
You never
wants to
fire a
lose
high
revenue.
performer.
Yeah, no one wants to lose revenue and productivity, but if it comes at the expense of 10 or 15 people around those one or two individuals, now you've got an entire portion of your floor who are just dread coming to work every day.
Yeah. And I think that the worst feeling and also like the best feeling is when you fire somebody like that. And I've done that as well. And then like you hear the collective sigh of relief from the other 10 team members and you get Slack messages like, wow,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
so it's a great feeling because you're like, oh, sweet, I did the right thing. But it's the worst feeling because you're like, oh my, I missed that. I
Yeah.
didn't realize how bad it was. So that is, I mean, I've lived that. You've lived that. A lot of business owners have. A lot of them haven't because they just kept them around and they don't even realize the employees that they had quit was because of that person or because of at least a downstream effect of that culture. So, hey, I appreciate it, man. Chris, where would we find you if we're trying to, if we're a shipper or we're a employee that wants to work at River City? How do I get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm super active on LinkedIn. Just find me, Chris Brewer. Our website is rclogistics.com. We're going through a new revamp, adding some new imagery and some drone footage of the warehouse to kind of showcase everything that we do. But we've got applications, truck drivers, operations people, as well as our internship program. You can apply through our website or hit me up on LinkedIn. But I appreciate you having me on, Gabe. Been a good time. Been a really fun hour.
Hey, it was awesome to have you. And I will say, I think that you're running the most successful brand and business that I've had on the podcast so far. So kudos to you and keep crushing it, man.
Thanks, Gabe.
See ya.